You've been planning wrong. Your bug-out bag is packed. Your emergency fund is hidden. You've got 3 months of freeze-dried meals stacked in the basement and a route memorized to your cousin's cabin in the mountains. You think you're ready? You're not. Because all of that preparation, all of that planning, all of those YouTube videos you watched about water filtration and fire starting, they're all built on one assumption that you haven't questioned. The assumption that when things go bad, you'll be able to leave. But what if you can't? What if the state you're living in right now, the place you call home, the location you've been preparing to defend or evacuate from, what if that state is designed, not by conspiracy, but by simple geography and systems architecture, to trap you the moment the grid blinks out? 7 American states have a problem. Not a crime problem, not a political problem, a structural problem. These states fail the same test that cities fail, but on a scale that's harder to see until you map it. They have borders that become barriers, resources that evaporate, populations that exceed carrying capacity by orders of magnitude, and escape routes that turn into kill zones the moment everyone has the same idea at the same time. Tonight, we're not talking about Hollywood. We're not talking about zombies or nuclear war or some fictitious collapse scenario that requires a screenplay to make sense. We're talking about Tuesday, a grid failure, a supply chain interruption, a cascading infrastructure collapse that starts in one region and spreads like a crack in glass. And if you're in one of these 7 states when that crack reaches you, your preparation doesn't matter. Your supplies don't matter. Your plan doesn't matter. Because the state itself has become the trap. Let's talk about structural inevitability. The rules, not my rules. Before we count down, we need to establish what makes a state survivable versus what makes it a geographic coffin with county lines. I didn't pick these states because of their politics. I didn't pick them because of population density or crime statistics. I picked them based on 3 quantifiable characteristics that determine whether a state's population can survive a prolonged grid-down scenario or whether that population becomes a casualty statistic measured in millions. The first characteristic is carrying capacity. How many people can this state's land actually support without external inputs? Not right now, with interstate highways and global supply chains. In a collapse, with no fuel deliveries, no food shipments, no municipal water systems pumping aquifer water into treatment plants. Most states have negative carrying capacity. They import far more than they produce. But some states have catastrophically negative carrying capacity. States where the population is 10, 20, 50 times larger than what the land could support through local agriculture, water sources, and available resources. When those external inputs stop, the math is simple and brutal. Too many people, not enough resources, time to failure measured in days. The second characteristic is geographic containment. How many ways can people leave? Are the borders open? Are there mountain passes that close in winter? Are there choke points where highways funnel through narrow corridors? Is the state surrounded by hostile terrain, desert, ocean, mountains, that makes overland travel without fuel impossible? A state with open borders and multiple egress routes gives its population options. A state with natural barriers and limited exit points gives its population a countdown timer. The third characteristic is dependency topology. What does this state need to function that it cannot produce itself? Water? Power? Food? Fuel? How many of those dependencies run through infrastructure that requires electricity, coordination, and maintenance? The more dependencies, the faster the collapse. The more those dependencies rely on systems outside the state's control, the less warning you get before everything stops working. Carrying capacity, geographic containment, dependency topology. Every state on this list fails at least 2 of these tests catastrophically. And the top 3? They fail all 3 so completely that calling them death traps feels like understatement. Let's start counting. Number 7. Florida. The peninsula that became a funnel. Florida has a problem that becomes obvious the moment you look at a map with fresh eyes. It's a peninsula. That's not a flaw, that's just geography. But peninsulas have one defining characteristic: one way in, one way out. Florida has 22 million people. Most of them live along the coasts. Miami, Tampa, Jacksonville, Orlando, dense urban centers connected by highways that run north-south through the interior. And when you trace those highways, you notice something uncomfortable. Every single evacuation route leads to the same place, north, through a corridor that narrows as you move inland, through Georgia, through the Panhandle, through choke points where 6 lanes of highway carry the combined evacuation traffic of an entire state. Do the math. Actually, don't. I already did. And the answer is, you're not getting out. We've seen this before. Hurricane Irma in 2017. The entire state was told to evacuate. The highways became parking lots within hours. People ran out of gas sitting in traffic. Gas stations ran dry. Accidents blocked lanes. Tempers flared. And that was with days of warning, functioning infrastructure, and a destination that people believed would be safe. In a grid-down scenario, that evacuation doesn't happen in an orderly way. It happens in panic. No traffic lights, no fuel pumps, no coordination. Just 22 million people realizing simultaneously that they need to be somewhere else and only one direction to go. Florida's carrying capacity is abysmal. The state imports the vast majority of its food. Agriculture exists, but not at a scale that feeds 22 million people. Citrus and sugarcane don't provide the caloric density needed to sustain a population through a prolonged collapse. Water becomes the next problem. South Florida relies on aquifer pumping and desalination plants, both of which require electricity. When the grid fails, the taps run dry. And unlike northern states where surface water is abundant, Florida's surface water in many areas is brackish, contaminated, or locked behind infrastructure that no longer functions. Then there's the heat. Florida averages 80 to 90 degrees for much of the year. High humidity, no relief. Without air conditioning, without fans, without any way to cool living spaces, buildings become ovens. Elderly populations go first, then everyone else. Florida isn't dangerous because it's chaotic. Florida is dangerous because it's a funnel. And in a collapse, funnels don't lead to safety. They lead to gridlock, resource depletion, and a population trapped between an impassable ocean and a clogged highway. Number 6, Arizona, the desert that requires a miracle. Arizona has 7.5 million people. Most of them live in 2 cities, Phoenix and Tucson, both built in environments that cannot support human life without massive technological intervention. Phoenix is the 5th largest city in America. It exists in the Sonoran Desert, where summer temperatures exceed 110 degrees and water doesn't exist naturally in quantities sufficient for a city of 1.7 million people. So where does the water come from? The Colorado River, delivered via aqueducts and canals, lifted uphill through pumping stations, stored in reservoirs, treated in plants, all of which require electricity. When the grid fails, Phoenix has 48 hours before the water supply collapses. Not slowly, not gradually, collapses. The pumps stop, the reservoirs drain, the taps run dry, and 1.7 million people are standing in one of the hottest environments in North America with no water and no way to get more. Tucson faces the same problem. Smaller population, same dependency, same timeline. Arizona's carrying capacity is essentially zero without external inputs. The desert does not produce food. It does not provide water. It does not offer natural shelter from heat. Every person in Arizona is alive because of engineering systems that move resources from somewhere else. The state has highways, I-10, I-17, I-40. But those highways run through desert, hundreds of miles of empty, hostile terrain. If you leave Phoenix heading east, you're driving through 200 miles of desert before you reach anything resembling civilization. If you leave heading west, it's the same. North? Mountains and more desert. South? Mexico, which has its own problems. And here's the cruel detail. You need fuel to cross that distance. Arizona has refineries, but they require electricity to operate. When the grid fails, those refineries shut down. Existing fuel supplies get consumed within days. Gas stations run dry. And suddenly, those highways aren't escape routes. They're just very long, very hot roads where your car becomes a metal coffin when it runs out of gas at mile 80. Arizona doesn't kill you with chaos. It kills you with thermodynamics and distance. You're trapped in an environment your body cannot survive without constant artificial cooling, surrounded by terrain that requires fuel you don't have to cross. In a state that imports everything, and produces nothing essential. Number 5. Hawaii, the island that forgot it's an island. Hawaii has the distinction of being the most isolated population center in the world. 2,500 miles from the nearest continent, 1.4 million people living on a chain of islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Under normal circumstances, this is paradise. Beautiful weather, stunning landscapes, a tourism-based economy that thrives on being remote and exotic. In a collapse, this is a death sentence. Hawaii imports 85% of its food, not some of its food, not supplemental food. The vast majority of every meal eaten in Hawaii arrives by cargo ship from the mainland. When those ships stop coming, and in a grid-down scenario they will, the food supply evaporates in less than a week. There's no backup. There's no neighboring state to drive to. There's no overland route. There's just ocean. 2,500 miles of it. And unless you have a boat, fuel, navigation equipment, and the skills to survive weeks at sea, that ocean is an impassable barrier. Hawaii's carrying capacity is limited. The islands support some agriculture, pineapples, coffee, macadamia nuts, but not at a scale that feeds 1.4 million people. Pre-contact Hawaiian populations were estimated at 300,000 to 400,000, sustained through intensive taro farming and fishing. Modern Hawaii has 4 times that population and far less agricultural infrastructure. When the food runs out, people starve. There's no evacuation. There's no bug-out plan. There's just the realization that you're on an island and the boats aren't coming. Fuel becomes critical immediately. Hawaii has no oil production. Every gallon of gasoline and diesel is imported. When shipments stop, the existing supply lasts days, maybe a week. Then vehicles stop moving. Generators stop running. Fishing boats can't leave harbor. The island becomes even more isolated. Water is less of an immediate problem. Hawaii has rainfall and natural aquifers. But distribution systems require electricity. When the grid fails, people in high-rise buildings lose water pressure. People in rural areas lose access to treatment plants. You're back to collecting rainwater and boiling it, which works on a small scale but not for a population of 1.4 million. Hawaii isn't a death trap because of violence or crime. It's a death trap because of distance. You can't walk to the next state. You can't drive to a region with more resources. You're stuck. And being stuck on an island when the supply chain breaks is just a slower version of drowning. Number 4. Nevada. The mirage that runs on imported everything. Nevada has 3.2 million people. 2/3 of them live in one city, Las Vegas. A city built in the Mojave Desert where the average annual rainfall is 4 inches, and summer temperatures regularly exceed 105 degrees. Las Vegas exists because of one structure, the Hoover Dam. It provides the electricity that powers the city. It provides the water that keeps 2 million people alive. It provides the illusion that building a major metropolitan area in one of the harshest deserts in North America was a good idea. When the grid fails, that illusion evaporates faster than water in the Mojave sun. The Hoover Dam generates about 4 billion kilowatt-hours per year. That power runs the pumps that move water from Lake Mead into the Las Vegas Valley Water District. That power runs the air conditioning that makes the city habitable for 8 months of the year. That power runs everything. In a grid-down scenario, the dam itself might still generate power, but the distribution network fails. Substations go offline. Transformers blow. The power doesn't reach Las Vegas. And within hours, the city starts dying. Water pressure drops as pumping stations fail. Taps run dry. Reservoirs empty. And 2 million people are standing in the desert with no water and no way to get more. Air conditioning stops. Interior temperatures in modern buildings climb toward ambient, and ambient in Las Vegas in summer is 110 degrees. Buildings become ovens. People die from heat exposure within 48 hours. Nevada's carrying capacity is 0. The state produces almost no food. The surrounding desert offers nothing. Every calorie consumed in Las Vegas was trucked in from somewhere else. When those trucks stop coming, the shelves empty in 3 days and stay empty. Egress is a nightmare. Las Vegas is surrounded by empty desert. I-15 runs north to Salt Lake City and south to Los Angeles. Both routes cross over 100 miles of desert with no services. US 95 runs northwest through even more empty terrain. If you leave when everyone else leaves, those highways become parking lots in the desert. And sitting in a car in the desert with no air conditioning and no water is just a creative way to die of dehydration. Nevada isn't just dependent, it's existentially dependent. The entire state exists because of infrastructure that requires constant external inputs. When those inputs stop, there's no fallback. There's no local resources. There's just empty desert and 3 million people who are about to discover why that desert was empty in the first place. Number 3, New Jersey, the density trap. New Jersey has 9.3 million people. It's the most densely populated state in America. 1,263 people per square mile. To put that in perspective, the national average is 94. Density is efficiency in normal times. Services are close, infrastructure is concentrated. Everything works because the systems are tightly integrated. In a collapse, density is a multiplication factor for every problem. New Jersey's carrying capacity is laughable. The state has some agriculture, tomatoes, blueberries, cranberries, but farming occupies a tiny fraction of the land. The vast majority of New Jersey is urban and suburban development. Dense, paved, dependent on food trucked in daily from agricultural states. When those trucks stop, 9.3 million people are competing for resources in an area the size of a postage stamp. Store shelves empty in hours. Warehouses get looted. Distribution centers become contested territory. There's no buffer. Water systems require electricity. New Jersey gets most of its water from surface reservoirs and underground aquifers, both of which require pumping and treatment. When the grid fails, pressure drops. High-rise buildings lose water above the 6th floor. Treatment plants stop operating. You're drinking untreated water, or you're not drinking at all. Egress is the real nightmare. New Jersey is wedged between New York and Pennsylvania. To the east, the Atlantic Ocean. To the west, the Delaware River. To the north, New York City's metropolitan sprawl. To the south, Philadelphia. Every escape route is a choke point. The New Jersey Turnpike, the Garden State Parkway, I-78, I-80, I-287. These highways are congested on a normal day. In an evacuation, they become parking lots within minutes. And here's the math. 9.3 million people, 6 major highways. Even if every lane operated at maximum capacity with no accidents and perfect traffic flow, you're looking at over 100 hours to evacuate the state. But lanes don't operate at maximum capacity during emergencies. Accidents happen. Cars run out of gas. People panic. The evacuation doesn't happen. The population gets trapped in density. And density without resources is just a very efficient way to concentrate casualties. New Jersey doesn't kill you with geography or climate, it kills you with crowding. Too many people in too small a space with too few ways out. Number 2, California. The coastal illusion. California has 39 million people. It's the most populous state in America. It has the 5th largest economy in the world. It has beaches, mountains, deserts, forests, and a reputation for being progressive, innovative, and prepared for disasters. It's also completely unsustainable without constant external inputs. California's carrying capacity is a fiction maintained by aqueducts. The state imports water from the Colorado River, from Northern California reservoirs, from groundwater aquifers that are being drained faster than they refill. Southern California, where 24 million people live, has almost no local water supply. Everything comes from somewhere else, pumped uphill through systems that require massive amounts of electricity. When the grid fails, those pumps stop. The aqueducts stop flowing. The reservoirs start draining. And within a week, Los Angeles, San Diego, and the entire Southern California region face catastrophic water shortages. Food is the next problem. California produces more agriculture than any other state. That's true, but California also consumes more food than it produces, especially when you account for the population density in urban areas. The Central Valley grows crops, but those crops are shipped nationally and internationally. They don't stockpile in Los Angeles warehouses. The cities rely on just-in-time delivery from distribution centers that restock daily. When trucks stop rolling, the cities starve fast. California's geography creates natural containment. To the east, the Sierra Nevada mountains and the Mojave Desert. To the west, the Pacific Ocean. To the south, the Mexican border, which becomes a hostile barrier the moment both sides collapse simultaneously. To the north, open terrain, but you're crossing hundreds of miles to reach Oregon or Nevada. The highways are the problem. I-5 runs north-south through the Central Valley. I-10 and I-15 run east through the desert. US 101 runs along the coast. These are the primary evacuation routes for 39 million people. Do the math. You're not evacuating. You're sitting in traffic until you run out of gas, water, or patience. California's cities are also fire traps. Los Angeles, San Diego, the Bay Area, they're all built in fire-prone ecosystems. Chaparral, dry brush, Santa Ana winds that turn small fires into firestorms. Every year, fires sweep through the region. Every year, they're stopped by firefighting infrastructure that requires water, electricity, and coordination. In a grid-down scenario, fires start and don't stop. No water pressure, no coordination, no aerial support. The fires burn until they run out of fuel. And in densely populated areas, that fuel is measured in structures and lives. California isn't a death trap because it's poorly managed. It's a death trap because it's fundamentally dependent. The population exceeds the land's ability to support it by an order of magnitude. The systems that bridge that gap, water, power, transportation, are fragile and interconnected. When one fails, they all fail. And 39 million people discover very quickly that paradise was just expensive infrastructure painted over an unforgiving landscape. Number 1. Texas. The independent myth. Texas has 30 million people. It's the second most populous state in America. It has its own power grid. It has oil production. It has agriculture. It has a cultural identity built around self-reliance and independence. It has a reputation for being prepared. It's also the most dangerous state to be in when the grid fails. And the reason isn't what you think. Texas's power grid is isolated. ERCOT, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, operates independently from the national grids. This was designed to avoid federal regulation. In a collapse, it means Texas can't draw power from neighboring states. When the Texas grid fails, and it has failed repeatedly during weather events, there's no backup, no interconnection, no safety net. The Texas grid failed in February 2021 during a winter storm. Millions lost power, hundreds died. Water systems froze, pipes burst. And that was a temporary event with external support coming in after days. In a prolonged grid-down scenario, that failure becomes permanent. And 30 million people are living in a state the size of France with no electricity and no way to get it from anywhere else. Water becomes critical immediately. Texas gets water from multiple sources: aquifers, rivers, reservoirs. But distribution requires electricity, pumping stations, treatment plants, pressure systems. When the grid fails, water pressure drops across the state. Cities lose access within days. Rural areas fare better if they have wells, but even wells require pumps. Texas has agriculture, cattle, cotton, wheat. But modern agriculture is mechanized. Tractors require diesel. Irrigation requires electricity. Harvesting requires fuel and coordination. When those inputs stop, production collapses. The food exists in fields, but you can't harvest it, process it, or distribute it without infrastructure. Texas also has heat. Summer temperatures across most of the state exceed 95 degrees. In cities like Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio, you're looking at 100+ degrees with high humidity. Without air conditioning, without fans, without any way to cool interior spaces, buildings become uninhabitable. Casualties mount within 48 hours. But here's the real problem. Texas has 30 million people and a culture that emphasizes gun ownership and self-reliance. When resources run out, when water stops flowing, when the heat becomes unbearable, that culture doesn't lead to cooperation. It leads to territorial defense. It leads to armed conflict over wells, over food, over anything that keeps people alive. Texas's carrying capacity is better than most states on this list. The land can support a population, but not 30 million. Not without modern agriculture, not without fuel and electricity and supply chains. The sustainable population of Texas using pre-industrial methods is probably closer to 3 million, maybe 5 million if you're optimistic. That means 25 million people are excess, and in a collapse, excess population doesn't quietly disappear. It fights, it migrates, it creates pressure on every remaining resource until those resources fail. Egress is theoretically possible. Texas has borders with Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. But those states have their own problems. And when 30 million Texans realize their state is failing, the borders become contested. Neighboring states close highways. They set up checkpoints. They defend their own resources. You're not evacuating to safety. You're evacuating into someone else's collapse. Texas isn't the #1 death trap because it's poorly prepared. It's the #1 death trap because it's isolated, oversized, and convinced of its own resilience. That combination creates complacency. And complacency in a state with 30 million people and an independent power grid is just deferred catastrophe waiting for a trigger event. All 7 of these states share characteristics. They have populations that exceed their carrying capacity. They have geographic barriers that limit egress. They have dependencies on systems that require constant electricity, fuel, and coordination to function. But the deeper pattern is this. They've all optimized for efficiency in normal times at the cost of resilience in abnormal times. They've built systems that work beautifully when everything works. And they've created vulnerabilities that become catastrophic the moment anything stops working. A state's population density isn't the problem. California's agriculture isn't the problem. Texas's power grid isn't the problem. The problem is that every one of these states has built a way of life that cannot survive interruption. And when the interruption comes, and it will, the people living there won't have time to adapt. You can't grow food in days. You can't find water in hours. You can't evacuate millions of people through choke points that are already clogged. The timeline from everything's fine to nothing works is shorter than most people realize. And the window to make decisions, real decisions, not optimistic ones, closes faster than the highways do. Maybe you live in one of these states. Maybe you're reading this and thinking, I can't just leave. I have a job. I have family. I have a mortgage. I have a life here. That's true, you do. And under normal circumstances, that life is fine. Better than fine. These states offer opportunities, weather, culture, things worth staying for. But we're not talking about normal circumstances. We're talking about the day the grid doesn't come back on. The day the trucks don't show up. The day the faucets run dry and the highways turn into parking lots, and the clock starts ticking on how long 30 million people can survive without the systems they've never had to think about. You don't have to leave today. You don't have to sell everything and move to Montana. But you do have to answer a question honestly. If the grid fails, if the collapse comes, if you have 1 hour to make a decision before the highways close and the chaos spreads, will you be able to leave? Or will you be one of the millions who realize too late that the state they called home was just the place they were standing when the infrastructure stopped and the geography remembered why it was empty before we built cities on it? The choice is still yours. For now.